Explain is that I've always felt the energy world around us. I've always felt the environment.
Anna describes herself as a super sensitive psychic whose 40-year passion for the paranormal, right from childhood, has evolved into a career specializing in professional paranormal house and property healing.
So she told me that she hadn't passed away in that home, but she'd come back to it because it was her safe place.
It's a really kind of fun, light talk, so I hope you enjoy. I've also been on Anna's podcast, Perfectly Paranormal, so check out that episode and all of them. And now for my conversation with Anna Schmidt. Hey everyone! I'm really excited to let you know about the science and spirituality salons I'm now hosting. During these intimate events, a scientifically verified psychic medium will give all of you readings, and I will give a talk on the science and evidence that changed my mind about an afterlife. This will also be an amazing opportunity to get to meet some of you in person or virtually, and to share more about all the science and data that transformed my worldview and got me through my worst days. These can be hosted in your home, in a nearby cafe with a private room, or they can even be virtual. I've hosted a few already, and they were really special, fascinating, emotional, evidential. So if you're interested in getting a small group together over dinner, brunch, drinks, coffee, to learn more about the science and to get evidential medium readings, send me an email at hello@wtfjusthappened.net and put science and spirituality in the title. Hi, everyone. I'm speaking today with Anna Schmidt, and she is a paranormal specialist. Welcome, Anna.
Hello, it's wonderful to be here with you, Liz.
It's wonderful to have you. So thanks for coming on. And I also want to say thank you so much. I was a guest on Anna's podcast. Remind me the name of your podcast again. I'm so sorry. I'm blanking. I'm
Perfectly Paranormal.
Yes, right. So Perfectly Paranormal. And we had a really fun conversation. And I, though, just wanted to ask Anna so many questions. So I was really excited she agreed to come on. What the fuck just happened? So Anna, like, you just do so many interesting things paranormal related. So you have your own abilities, you do psychic and energy cleansing, but I guess I'll ask, when did you first realize you had abilities, psychic abilities, energy reading abilities? I don't know how you define it.
It's hard, it's kind of hard to explain, is that I've always felt the energy world around us. I've always felt the environment. I don't always see or hear spirits or the darker energy beings. It's mostly the feeling when I go from one place to another, or I'm with one person and then I'm with another person. I can feel sort of subtle energetic changes within the environment. And that was from a very early age, probably from about 5, 6, 7. I've always been a little bit different. I mean, what's normal? I mean, none of us are what we would call normal. But I've always just had this very strong sense that there is something else in the environment other than what we can see, hear, feel, smell, taste, that there is other energetic aspects that are around us all the time.
What does that mean exactly, to feel energies? Is it like, I can't even identify.
I always give very relatable experiences because everywhere I go, I can feel the energy. So let's talk about going to the supermarket. I might be walking down one aisle and it feels fine. My brain is clear. I haven't got any brain fog. My stomach feels okay. And I'm just having a normal day. I'm going to the supermarket. Now, I'll walk down the supermarket aisle and I'll stand in front of, I don't know, coffee, tin fruit or something. And I'm standing there and I'm like, oh, I start to feel unwell in the body. Like I might get a mild stomach ache. My heart might palpitate. I might get brain fog, or I feel like there's something else in that location. So then what I'll do is I'll move like a meter or two away, and then I'll assess how I feel there. And I'm like, oh, I start to feel normal again. And when I step back into that spot I was just standing in, I start to feel unwell in the body, like my body reacts with physical symptoms. So I always say to people, if you go to a place and you feel uncomfortable there, move somewhere else and just gauge whether you're noticing a difference, because there might be something in that first location that is affecting the way your energy feels. It's really hard to understand or explain unless you've actually felt it yourself.
Now, you described something that doesn't sound like it feels too good. Do you also get the opposite? Do you feel really good energies?
If I'm connecting with higher vibrational beings, but to your guides, angels, archangels, spirit guides, that is like a warm, fuzzy, light sort of feeling. And you might sort of get a slight touch on the hair, or you might see like a little sprinkling of lights in front of your eyes. That's sort of a standard thing that a lot of people see. I seem to be really tuned into the lower vibrational energies because it just seems to be it's my speciality. I didn't choose it. It kind of chose me, and I've grown into it over the years and just understand that it is who I am now, and I just roll with it.
The lower vibrational are the more negative ones that make you feel not so good. Is that what you mean?
Yes, yeah. Because our energy body within our physical body will sense changes in the energetic environment. I mean, our physical body will feel hot, cold, sort of windy, sort of other environmental changes. But our soul energy, our light energy, our energy body, whatever you want to call it, it picks up on the subtle energetic changes. Like in the supermarket, I can walk through aisles and I'm like, oh, I can feel it coming. And I just will make a little detour. People look at me like, what is wrong with that woman? I'll make a strange sort of detour in the supermarket just to avoid a particular area. And it's not that I'm frightened or scared of it. It's just that I just don't want to interact with whatever happens to be in that location.
And what are these energies? Are they like other dimensional, like discarnate energies that maybe were not someone who was not so nice, or could it be a living person who maybe is just a violent criminal and horrible hearted person? So where is it coming from?
Okay. So people create emotional imprints. So everything that you think, say, do, every action and reaction creates a vibration. So if you're feeling light and happy and lovely and joyous, you're creating a higher vibration. They don't seem to stick in this very dense earth reality. When people are in lower vibrational states, they might be going through a life trauma, or they're having difficulty with their job or their family, and they're feeling resentful or guilty or shameful, or they've just got traumas in their energy at that time. Wherever you go and stand and you're thinking about those particular events in your life, you can leave these little pools of energy everywhere you go. So these pools of energy attract energy feeders, which are the lower vibrational energies. We're not talking spirits, because spirits are people's soul energy that has just left their physical body. The physical body has worn out, and their soul energy can sometimes still be in the environment before they transition off into the afterlife. These are what I call the energetic feeders. So I give them two levels. We talk about the dark energy beings and we talk about the demonic level beings. And they're just two different levels of energy. The dark energy beings are a little bit more your mischievous, your sort of poltergeisty type behaviour. And they're a little bit like naughty people. You know, their behaviours are very, very similar. They just behave a little bit badly. And so they can be in that environment feeding off that energy. Now, when there's lots of these build-ups, so say I'll use a home. Say someone sits in a corner in their home in their chair and they're having a really tough time in their life and they're really hateful and resentful towards their family. No one visits them. They feel lonely. They feel abandoned. The person sits in that chair and they ruminate about how terrible their life is. They're creating a pool of big, big build-ups. That attracts what I call the demonic level beings. Now, they're not what you see in the movies. They're just a denser vibration of energy. And they're the ones that really affect my bodily reactions. Like I'll get the stomach ache, I'll get the headache, I'll get brain fog. Sometimes they affect my walking. Sometimes my speech patterns will change, like slurry talking, or my jaw will slightly dislocate. I just get lots of physical symptoms when these beings are around.
So now the dark energy level beings are like kind of one layer of negative, just like you can meet people that are rude and make you feel ugh, and then demonic level, when you meet people then that are like rapists and killers, which is different than the person who just insults everyone and makes everyone feel ick about themselves. I mean, those are two levels of brutality, and I don't want to be around either one, but definitely one is a lot darker and worse than the other. So that's kind of a good comparison between the two.
Absolutely.
So what were they? Were they ever people that were just terrible people? Like, would Hitler be a demonic level now discarnate entity, or are they just energies that were not ever like individual conscious humans?
So people ask me this question quite a lot. It's like comparing angels and archangels. Have they ever been people? They're a higher vibrational being. They are a cosmic being. I call them cosmic beings, the same as the extraterrestrial beings are cosmic beings. The dark and the demonic level beings are the other end of the scale of these incarnate entities. They're just a vibration, because everything in the universe, as you will know through all the research and the work that you do with people, everything is a vibration. So we have the higher vibrational beings doing their thing and supporting us, and we have the darker energy beings who actually pull us up on our behaviors and on our emotional imprints. So they kind of teach us as well about what to not create, because when we don't create big pools of emotional imprints and we're living in a higher vibration and we're much happier in our lives, the lower vibrational beings aren't interested in us. They only go where the food source is.
And so I just have another question, because you said that they're more like the angels and archangels. Were they ever human? I don't know. Were they? I know nothing about angels or archangels. So were they human or no? So so I don't know what you mean when you said that.
I don't have all the answers. I can only give you what they have shared with me, because quite often when you work with them on a constant daily basis, you can ask them questions. If you're respectful, you're going to get a respectful response most of the time. Now, they have never existed in human form. They are pure energy at different ends of the scale. Whereas our soul energy, which is pure energy as well, for whatever reason, we choose to come to this earth reality to inhabit these physical bodies, to learn lessons. Some people say we already know all our lessons, but I think we kind of forget, or we get sidetracked, or ego gets in the way, and we're kind of put into these bodies to unpack and uncover who we are, why we're here, what our existence means. And we have these two sort of other levels of energy that support us, sort of in different ways. Like I mentioned earlier, the angelic beings support us with love and guidance and all that. But the darker energy beings help us work with our shadow selves.
Okay, so what is our shadow selves?
Interesting. Our shadow selves are quite often the aspects of ourselves that we don't like or that we don't want to deal with. Now, I quite often will use my emotional imprint of resentment as an example, because resentment is one thing that I used to create quite readily, is that if I didn't like something or a situation or someone was annoying me, in my mind, I would get quite resentful towards them. Now, it wasn't outward resentment. I was never angry or hostile. There was nothing physical about it, but your thoughts create energy. And I know now from very long years of having to understand how my resentment works is that I don't need to do it. It's not useful. And I found that out because these beings would be drawn to me. These dark energy beings would come to me because I was sitting there creating all these negative thoughts and these resentful thoughts towards people, whereas really, isn't it much easier just to talk about the problem, find a solution, think about it to yourself as to whether is it relevant to me to be resentful towards that person? Most of the time it isn't. We create so many of our own problems, and these darker energy beings come along and they kind of pick us up on, you create resentment. Don't do it, otherwise we're going to hang around you. And when they hang around me, I feel like the symptoms I mentioned earlier. I also have trouble with sleeping. My dreams are dark. I'm just rolling around in bed all night, can't sleep properly, wake up feeling really tired. And I have all those physical symptoms of the brain fog and so forth. When I don't create resentment, which is part of my shadow self, when I've worked on why I create it and not creating it in the future, I don't attract them. Now, I'm not perfect. I'm about 80% there. I can recognize something that causes me to create resentment or that I create resentment about it. And I'll pull myself up and do a bit of self-help work, do a bit of self-talk, and then find that I don't get resentful and they simply doesn't attract these beings.
Okay. So that's about the worst they can do. They just make us feel bad, kind of throw us off our life paths. It's not like some horror movie where they can kill us or hijack us and make us, do just violent, horrible things that are completely out of our character, correct?
Now this is where it gets interesting.
Oh, no.
People look at the movies and go, oh, the devil made me do it. And then I'll go, actually, no, the devil can't make you do anything. If you have a predisposition towards violence or hostility or some negative behavior, if these beings come within your vicinity, so you've got an addiction. We'll just use an example. I had a young client who was addicted to marijuana and mushrooms, constantly taking marijuana and mushrooms because he was just unhappy in his life and he didn't want to deal with his problems. What he did is he attracted these dark and these demonic beings. He had 5 or 6 that were just making his life just unbearable. When I worked with him, talked to these beings, they told me what they were attached to within him. When he understood why they were there, he then went, you know what? I think it's about time that I actually go and get some help for this problem. He'd been avoiding a particular problem in his life since childhood, from the age of 3 right through to the age of 19. And he finally decided, you know what? I've had enough of living like this. So these beings are attracted to us because of particular predispositions within us. So if you're looking at someone who commits suicide, it's because there is some life trauma within them that they haven't dealt with. And it could be from childhood, it could be from adulthood. There is something that they have pushed really deep down inside them. And because of that, they're a little bit emotionally vulnerable, they're a little bit mentally vulnerable. They may attract these beings through drinking too much or through doing drugs. The energy beings get into their energy field and then they can push their buttons. So they'll go, yeah, I can see this person's vulnerable here. Let's push them and see how far we can get them to go. Now, they're not going to make you commit suicide. I know this is an extreme case, but I have seen it within a few people. They're not going to make you do it, but they'll push that button because it's already there.
Okay. So, and I guess, so what you said, until things are dealt with, what can people do to deal with these issues?
Okay. So quite often people will come to me for an energy clearing. So just as I clear people's homes of all detrimental, dark or demonic beings, help spirits find the light, clear out all the emotional imprints within homes, I do the same for people. So I will do an energy clearing for someone and I'll identify what their emotional triggers are that their higher self is showing me. And then I'll write it in a report. I'll clear all the emotional imprints. I'll clear the paranormal beings from the person. It's like doing an energetic spring clean. So what it does is it gives them a clean slate to work with. And then I'll say to this person is that now you've got this clean slate. You know that you're feeling unworthy because unworthy was one of your big triggers. Talk to a counsellor. Seek out mental health care to work on why you felt unworthy right back from the age of 2 or 3, which I identified through my dowsing. And it kept coming up all through their life that they were unworthy and unworthy and unworthy. When they can unpack with professional help through a counsellor what this unworthy, what it's caused by, they can help them to remove that issue and give them strategies to not feel unworthy in the future. And then therefore, they're going to create maybe 10% unworthy compared to 100%. Because none of us are perfect. We can't totally avoid these emotional imprints. But when you can work on it, it gives you a better chance of keeping these paranormal beings at bay.
So, and I know you touched upon both of these, paranormal, the house cleansing and the energy cleansing. So first of all, what exactly, let's start with the house. What is a house energy cleaning or house energy cleansing? I don't know if I'm saying it right.
That's okay. It all means the same thing. Basically, you're clearing the energy of the home. So a house clearing is, and I also do the land and all the outbuildings as well. It's not just the house. I like to think of it as the full piece of the property. So what you're doing is you're asking permission. I ask permission to enter the land. I speak with the land guardians. I speak with the house guardian. Do I have permission to energetically enter this property to clear out all detrimental energetic imprints, trauma imprints, addictions, paranormal beings? You're basically doing a cleanup energetically of the land, because no matter how much you clean your house or mow your lawns, there's always going to be negative imprints there if they've been created in the past. So what I do is I do what I've outlined there. Now, I work worldwide. So people will send me a floor plan of their home for each level of the home. They'll send me their address and a photo of the front of the house, because I like to talk to the building as I do the work, because buildings are living entities. Everything has a vibration. Everything, including the land, can absorb our emotional imprints. So I will go into a property like I've just described, clear the land first of any emotional imprints, trauma imprints, which are basically actions that have happened on the land. There can be massacres, there can be drug addictions, there can be self-harming, there can be suicide, death. Those sorts of things that happen on the land create that imprint that I talked about earlier. So I will do a full cleanse. When I do this work, I write a very detailed report for the client, so they will know exactly what was on the land, when it was created. Usually I can discern whether it was by male or female energy, and when. The when is the important, because when you unpack all these emotions and all these trauma imprints, you can see the history of the home, the history of the people that have lived in that home. And when I do a house clearing, it's not just a skim over the whole house. I go through every single room in the home. Now, people go, aren't you just, isn't it a bit too much, And I'm going, no, actually, because if you don't do a particular room, what if something's occurred in that room and there may be 2 or 3 dark energies hanging around in there? Could be a child's bedroom, could be the bathroom, could be the master bedroom, could be where you sit in your favourite chair watching the telly every night, and you just don't feel right and you don't know why. Because when you go to work, you feel great. You're out of the house or you go socialising, you feel great. When you come home and you sit in that chair, you're like, oh, I just don't feel right. So I go through every room. Sometimes there's furniture, antique furniture in people's homes that will need attention. as well, because like I mentioned earlier, everything has a vibration and can absorb emotional imprints. So it's very, very thorough work to do an energy clearing, and it can take anything from 25 to sometimes 40 hours to do the land, all of the outbuildings, because you'd be surprised what people get up to in their sheds, growing marijuana, smoking marijuana, all sorts of different levels of drug activity, because that's a lower vibration.
Is even marijuana a lower vibration, would you say? Or
marijuana is a big one because it's readily available. It's easy to get hold of. It alters people's consciousness. When you alter your consciousness, and depending on what your vulnerabilities are, like we talked about earlier, what you're predisposed to, whether you've got mental health issues or addiction issues, or you've got a trauma you haven't dealt with, the marijuana can sometimes open that doorway, and these paranormal beings can get their foot in the door and then start manipulating people's behaviors. So people clearing is the same as house clearing. I know that's a strange comparison, but I look at, when I ask permission to enter a person's energy field, I create what I call energy cording, which is a cord that is created to do the work, and then it is fully disconnected afterwards. So I will ask the person's higher self, do I have permission to do an energetic clearing for, and I'll say the person's name. And I use pendulum dowsing. Dowsing is my way of getting my answers outside my head, because we have so much stuff going on in our brains all the time. The pendulum gives me a really strong focal point outside the body. So I will then ask with the pendulum, are there any paranormal beings present? And there's usually a yes. Now, most people are quite horrified by that. Most of us will carry paranormal attachments at some time in our life. Doesn't mean they're going to be there all the time, but they'll come, like I mentioned earlier, because of particular life experiences, traumatic experiences, where your brain is at, what you think about. So a personal clearing is just as detailed. I go through the person's physical body. I look at their organs. I look at 13 chakras. I look at 14 meridian lines and the 7 layers of their energy field. So it's a full cleanse of all emotional imprints, trauma imprints. There might be addiction behaviors that show themselves. Now, as I said earlier, I'm a feeler. Feel the energy around me in the environment. When I tune into people or homes or the land, sometimes I see in my third eye what has gone on in the property. I worked on a house the other day where there'd been a lot of domestic violence. Like, it was really quite horrific. Pretty much in every room of the home, it was just riddled. And the family that had moved in 6 months ago just couldn't, they just said, look, I just can't live here. We haven't been here long. We can't afford to move. We don't know what to do. When I tuned in, and I'm not going to share what I saw because it's very, very graphic. I get very quick flashes of graphic images that say to me, okay, that's happened there, that's happened there. Oh, yep, this bit of violence happened here, a bit of alcoholism, induced violence has happened in that room. Okay, so there's some mental health issues in that room, and I'll see someone injecting themselves with a needle. It's just quick flashes. I don't see the people, so it's not like I'm invading their privacy. It's more just giving my human brain a way of seeing the energy in that building. And sometimes I'll hear, this is a very quick story I'd just like to share. I worked on a home for a lady recently, really bad smell in one room. Like, it was really bad. She said, I don't know what it is. I've had it cleaned, carpets cleaned and so forth. In this room, there was a little doorway in the wall that had been closed. Now, I left that room till last and that doorway till last, because when I looked at the floor plan of the home, my stomach churned and my brain went, don't look at that yet. You need to make sure the whole house is cleaned first, then you go into that room. There'd been a lot of domestic violence in that house as far back as 50 years ago, and there was alcohol involved and there was drugs involved. This little room that had been closed off was now underneath a staircase that had been used to create a small sort of second level, another bedroom and a sewing room on top of this other house. When I tuned into that space underneath the stairs, I didn't feel anything. I didn't see anything, but I heard, shh, he can hear me in here. Please be quiet. So what I'll say it again. It's not the exact wording. I can't remember the exact wording. She said, shh, he won't find me in here. And I went, what? And I'm like, that's not my brain. When I do this work, I'm totally blank. You go into these jobs, a clean slate yourself. And I kept hearing, shh, he won't find me in here. And I found myself doing it, like putting the finger to my mouth, like I was feeling this spirit energy. Now, this was a lady who'd been abused by her husband for many, many, many years. And that little room that was now under the stairs was her safe place. Because when she went in there and she pulled the door shut, he couldn't find her. So she told me that she hadn't passed away in that home, but she'd come back to it because it was her safe place. She didn't know where to go. She didn't know how to get to the afterlife. She felt like she'd caused the abuse that had happened to her all those years. And spirits, when they leave their bodies.
And these were the previous people who lived there before this family moved in. Okay.
People who'd lived there for about 40 years in that home. So this woman had experienced domestic abuse for a very long time. Now, they moved out of this house and went wherever. Within that time, the lady had passed away and she'd come back to that little space under the stairs. And I explained to her that what happened to her wasn't her fault and that she should forgive herself for whatever blame she had put on herself. And we had really quite a detailed conversation. And within maybe 10, 15 minutes, her energy changed. Like I felt, because I was feeling tense and I was feeling how she was feeling. She relaxed and she was like, so I can go and be with my grandparents on the other side. And it was like, yes, all you need to do is make that conscious choice, make that free will choice to go. And as soon as I said that, she said to me, I can see my grandparents. She could see them sort of over like a picket fence. Sometimes people will see a picket fence when they're going to the other side, or they'll see a tunnel of light. I think it's all very individualistic. I don't know because I haven't been there yet. But within another 1 or 2 minutes, she was gone. Like it was her trauma that was holding her here within this earth reality. And as soon as she realised that she could go, she went. She didn't think she'd be accepted because she'd caused all this drama in the home and she was the causer of all this abuse. Once she realised she wasn't, her free will allowed her to simply leave this earth reality.
Hi. So exciting news. Book number 2, WTF Just Happened. A sciencey skeptic investigates even more evidence of an afterlife and fights for justice with her dead dog, is ready. You can get it everywhere in both ebook and paper. This book essentially picks up where WTF Part 1 left off. I continue to experience a bunch of what the fuckery, and it's a bit different now because I know the mediums pretty well, so I get some actual opinions on what they thought of me when they first met me. I get more crazy signs, and the evidence just keeps accumulating. I keep bugging my dad for that one sign I really, really wanted, and some really crazy stuff happens related to that. I conduct experiments with psychic medium Joe Peretta, and again, bunch of what the fuckery. And in a really weird twist, I get called as a secondary witness to testify in the Harvey Weinstein case, which is a secondary plot. And that results in my dog, Peanut, who is on the other side. and sending me some signs, ends up becoming famous. So, if you want to keep hearing about scientific evidence of an afterlife and this really bizarre side story, you can go order my second book in the series. I love getting to say it that now. WTF Just Happens, actually a series. So you can go to my website, and that links to everywhere this book's available. It's available in ebook and print, not yet audiobook. That's not going to be nearly as long as it was for book one, but it's going to be a few more months. So you can go to my website and order WTF Just Happened. A sciencey skeptic investigates even more evidence of an afterlife and fights for justice with her dead dog.
So now, specifically that story, how had you found out that what you were getting was true? How had you found out that a woman had really lived there with an abusive husband?
I don't know.
Okay. Oh, it wasn't verified. Okay.
I experienced.
Got it. Okay. I thought you were saying you also then found out the story. Okay.
There's no way for me to quantify that, because it's not that people, the house isn't here. It's in the overseas. The house is overseas. So the people don't really want to go looking into the history of the home. They don't want to dig up and know the name of this man that used to abuse his wife. All I can do is offer the energy beings a release. And I trust that, because I don't go into homes looking for paranormal beings, looking for spirits. I'm a clean slate when I enter these buildings, and I just allow it to unfold as it needs to.
So was there any crazy evidential experience you had where you got some information that was specific that was later verified?
I used to do palmistry and numerology readings. So I would go to psychic events and I would offer my readings to the people that were at the event. And one day a young man came and sat with me, and he didn't give his name, he didn't give anything. And I'm talking to him and I'm looking at his hand. Now, this information didn't come from his hand. I said to him, "You haven't planted the white rose bush." And he looked at me like, what are you talking about? I said, "There's a lady here. She could be your mother or your grandmother or an auntie. She's an older lady. And she's saying to me in a loving way, 'You haven't planted my white rose bush.'" And this young man looked at me and he went, "My mum passed 3 weeks ago. How do you know she wanted me to plant the white rose bush?" I said, "I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. And I'm hearing in my head this voice saying, 'You haven't planted my white rose bush.'" Now, I didn't know this young man. He just came to one of these events. Haven't seen him since. But that was really poignant information for him. Now, I don't do mediumship because I can't turn it on and look at someone and give them a mediumship reading. But I think we all have this innate ability to channel information from the other side when we allow ourselves to do it, when we believe it's possible. So as much as I feel that was a mediumship reading from his mum, I don't class myself as a medium because it's not my focus, it's not my interest. But sometimes this will happen. Now, another very short, very strange, weird little evidential, you'll find it interesting, is I was doing palmistry readings at a hippie shop, and I'm sitting there and a lady sat down and she didn't really say much. And as soon as she put her hand on top of mine, I said to her, "What's with the cows?" I said to her, "I'm seeing cows." I said, "I didn't see cows till you sat down." And it took us about 10 minutes to work out. I kept getting cow. It wasn't cows. It was just the one cow. Cow, 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 cow. And she went, "Oh, I've been trying to decide whether I move to Brisbane or Kalgoorlie."
That's such a funny way to get it.
And I was seeing a cow and I kept hearing cow, cow, cow. So I said to this lady, we asked for information for you today, and this is what's been given. It's still up to you whether you choose, whether you move to Brisbane or go to Kalgoorlie. But she said, oh, well, my family's in Kalgoorlie. She said, I wanted to go to Brisbane for work. I said, well, it's totally up to you what you choose to do. But I said, but I'm still hearing cow. I kept hearing cow, cow, cow. When she got up and left, the word disappeared. Didn't hear the voice again, but it was so funny. I'm like, cow? That is probably the most strangest sort of voice that I've heard that was related to a client's information that she needed. And I don't know what she did, but I've always remembered that as, I'm like, why would you think about cows when you're talking to a client? It is just not. But then she came up with Kalgoorlie, which is the first three syllables, first three sounds in that word.
So when you're buying things, are you able to buy secondhand? Like, can you ever buy vintage clothing or reused furniture, repurposed furniture? You're able to do that. Do you get stories ever when you get it? Does it feel different than if you're just to go buy a new couch? Okay,
Yes,
so tell me a story that's happened with that, if you can.
Oh my gosh. I'll give two, one that is mine and one that it belongs to a client. So I sell at local markets pendulums because I like to teach people about dowsing. For pendulums, the ones that I buy are crystals, so they come out of the earth. Now, quite often crystals aren't happy because they don't want to be out of the earth. They want to be left in the earth to do whatever it is that they're there for, whatever it is that their vibration is there for. I had a mailman come to my front door one day and he handed me a parcel. And before I went to the front door, I felt fine. I just felt my normal. Head was clear. I was, doing some work. Went to the front door, looked at the postman, took the parcel. Thank you very much. When I got inside, I went, I started to feel really sick. Like I felt like flu sick, like gastro sick in the stomach. I went, I feel really unwell. So I went and sat down, got out my pendulum, and I asked, did this negative emotional feeling I'm getting coming from the postman, is it his? No, it wasn't his at all. And I put the parcel in between my two hands, one hand on top, one hand on the bottom. And I went, okay, I could feel energy moving around in the parcel. It was kind of weird. It was like something running around inside a plastic bag. It was really quite creepy. So I went, okay, it's coming from the parcel. Now, I never panic when I do these jobs. It's just like, I'm just going to open it. I'm just going to unpack what it was. I laid out the 6 pendulums. And I used my dowsing to ask if each one was clean and clear of all paranormal beings and emotional imprints. 5 of them were quite happy, just doing their own thing. There was one that was just not happy. Like it wanted my attention. It was like, I don't want to be here. If you put me in that box with all those other pendulums, if you had a stainless steel chain and put a little bauble on the end, I'm just going to make your life hell. I don't want to be here. I want to go back to the earth. So what I did is I took this crystal as far up the back of my yard as I could. I dug a hole under one of my favourite trees and I did a little ceremony returning this crystal to the earth. Put it back in the earth, covered it over, a bit of mulch, back into the house. As I walked away, started to feel normal again. No brain fog, no stomach aches. Now, this crystal was so intense that it was affecting my walking, like trying to carry it up. It's like I was walking on a boat, and it was just the strangest thing. But anyway, this crystal is now happy in my backyard. No more issues. The other 5 were fine. So when I bring items into the home, whether they're items I bought new or whether they're secondhand or whether a friend gives them to me, I'll always observe the energy. I probably should check everything that comes in, but I'm a bit lazy like most people and can't really be bothered. But if I put a chair or something in my bedroom and the energy of my bedroom changes, I'm like, okay, do the detective work. What have you added into that room within the last week when you start to feel unwell? I'm like, the chair. No wonder I haven't sat in that yet. My body knew not to sit in it, but I was so occupied with all the stuff that we have going on in our lives, daily stuff, that I just went, oh, I'll get to it, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. Now, one really interesting wardrobe that was in one of my clients' homes, these people bought a home and they inherited some of the furniture that came with it, because this wardrobe was solid wood, very heavy, very large. And the people were like, we're just going to leave it here. And the people were happy to have it in their home. It was absolutely beautiful. The doors were ornately decorated, beautiful mirror, not a scratch on it. When I walked past that room, it was the first door on the left. When I walked into the home, we went to the lounge room, which was a few doors up on the right. And as I walked into the house, my spidey senses, I call them, my paranormal radar, I walked past that door, I felt this pull into that room. And I mean, you don't just randomly go walking around people's homes. It's just not acceptable. So we went to the lounge room. We had a conversation about what the issues were in the home. The mum slept in that room, not very well, and she'd never slept well since they moved into this house. So I'm like, is it okay if I do a walk around the house? So what I mean by that is I go into each room and I use my body as the dowsing tool. It's like I mentioned earlier, I get all these physical symptoms when the lower vibrational beings are around. So I'm walking around the house and I knew exactly the room I wanted to go to first. So I kind of headed out of the lounge room, down the hallway, and I said, look, can I go in here? I'm not going to touch anything. I just move around the room and just feel what I can feel, because I'm a little bit of a paranormal addict. I like the high that I get from doing this paranormal work, which makes me really good at it because I'm so sensitive. I can just sense the energy in items, in people, in places. So as soon as I walked into this room, I knew where I had to go, to this wardrobe. And I stood there and I said to her, look, do you mind, can I put my hands on this wardrobe? Because this is a private house. You don't go around touching other people's furniture, sitting on the beds, all that sort of thing, unless you ask first. So I'm standing there and I put my hands on this wardrobe, one on the front, one on the side. And I started caressing the wardrobe. It was the strangest thing you'll ever see. And I'm going, you need some love, don't you? I'm letting my higher self guide me with this. And as soon as I started speaking, my voice changed. Now, I've got a slightly sort of gravelly, low sort of toned voice. It got darker and it got gravelier. Now, my head didn't spin and I didn't speak in forked tongues or any of that sort of thing. But she said to me, your voice has changed. And I went, yep, I'm just observing. So what I'll do is I'll go into places and I'll observe the energy with my eyes, with my ears, with my psychic senses. I'm very tactile. I like to touch things. I like to stand in places. That gives me my feel. So I'm talking to this wardrobe and I'm like, you really need some love. They sent me a photo of the wardrobe. When I got home, opened my email, looked at the photo, and I said, do I have your permission to do an energetic clearing for you? And I got this big yes. Now, what the yes is, sometimes it's a wave of energy that sort of hits my body. It's like, phew. Or sometimes I'll hear the word yes. Or if my pendulum is out, if I've got that out ready to go and I ask, I'll get a very big clockwise circle, which is a very strong sign of yes. So I tuned into this wardrobe. The wardrobe had witnessed, again, quite graphic images of a female being abused and pushed up against the wardrobe. Now, how I can explain that is that I saw just the arms. When I say I see flashes of images, it's not a whole person. What I saw was a woman's arms, and she'd been pushed quite violently up against this wardrobe. And the whole wardrobe, as heavy as it was, had almost rocked a little bit, like the energy of it had changed. And this had occurred over numerous times. Now, the wardrobe had also been used to house occult paraphernalia. So I didn't ask what sort. It's not my business to go prying into the details. My job is to clear all the energy that was in that wardrobe. So I didn't see any occult behaviors, but I kept seeing this woman being pushed up against this wardrobe. And it was really quite traumatizing. Being a female and seeing someone else being abused like that really hammers into me that this energy needs to be removed from this wardrobe. So I tuned in, did all the clearing work, cleared all the occult energy, all the black magic energy, spells, curses, hexes, all sorts of things that had been used to create negative intentions towards others had to be cleared from the wood and the space within the wardrobe, because it's two totally different things. When I clear houses, it's the room, the furniture, the fittings. And beds are especially bad. I have to do beds separately because for some reason people dump an awful lot of stuff in their beds.
Sleeping, probably.
About 8 hours a night in them approximately. So this wardrobe, once it was cleaned, I went back and visited them a week later. The lady's sleep improved. Still wasn't 100% because she'd had negative sleep for quite a long time. I also cleaned her bed as well, because she's one of those people that goes to bed and ruminates about all the traumatic things that are happening in her life. So she was looking at this in a multiple of ways. She was seeing a mental health professional to help her with her traumas. I'd energetically cleaned the whole house and the wardrobe and her bed. She talked to her daughter about her issues. They were looking at supporting and helping each other. And the wardrobe had actually catapulted this lady into a whole heap of life change in a positive way. So sometimes we have to go through the negative to then step into the positive.
So, no, how do you think objects, because objects are not conscious, how do you think, is it like an energy imprint? I don't know if you know about, like, I know some parapsychologists like Lloyd Arbach talks about hauntings versus apparitions, and I always forget which is which. Like, I know it, but I have to think of it on the go. I always forget. But one, supposedly he'll say, holds, you know, you're communicating with the consciousness. Like, we're on video, but we're speaking now and you're there, versus if I was watching you give a Zoom recording, that one is a haunting and the other is an apparition. And so, you know, is it like that, the one where it's an imprint of an energy? It's not like the object contains consciousness. It has an imprint of a consciousness or an imprint of an event or an energy that was released at a moment or over time, kind of like that.
Absolutely. So if you think about walking into a room where people have been brawling, they've been arguing, they've been swearing at each other, the energy feels prickly and it could feel dense and it could feel heavy and you feel uncomfortable. That's the energetic vibration of the room has changed. Now, that energy, to me, this is how I think about it, will all settle into the room, into the furniture that's in that room, and it'll become part of the environment. I mean, you walk into one of your favorite rooms in your house, you know, it might be a meditation room, or you walk into your conservatory where your garden is and you feel happy and joyous and positive things happening there. It feels totally different energy-wise. So yes, I call them energy imprints, which I find in objects. So the occult magic one, that's what I call a dark magic imprint. The emotional imprints are when people create things like resentment, hatred, guilt, you know, rage, hostility. I go through a list of 100 every time I look in every area of everything. It's really very OCD. But I get to the detail. The detail is what clears the paranormal beings. So yes, you're right. It's an imprint of energy onto objects that leaves that everlasting vibration on. I don't know whether it's on or within the object. I don't really need to know. I just keep my work very focused on clearing that energy.
So I don't know, just because I like putting things together scientifically, and I'm just completely guessing this. So tell me, does this make sense? I'm just going to expand a little bit on what I said. but you know how nothing's really solid. According to physics, everything are tiny particles with a lot of space vibrating, creating an illusion of solid to us because we're so big and we're not actually solid either. So there's all this space, and energy seems to be waves. I mean, information we already know is caught in light waves that travels on at, the speed of light. And that's just pure Einstein physics, not even anything to do with parapsychology. So it makes sense if we already know factually. And I mean, just the human animal conscious experience is already so complex. I'm sure only know a tiny minuscule a bit about how it works, but we do know that every single thing that's happened in this iteration of the universe is contained in light waves that continue on holding that energy. So would it be something like that energy, the experiences, probably emotions and stuff, are also caught in waves that we don't understand yet, the way what has visually happened is caught in light waves. So, and that would interact and go in and maybe in some way change the vibration of these small vibrating particles of these objects that we think of as solid. Does that make any sense? And does that sound right?
It does. As you were talking, I was seeing a child with mud on their hands. Everywhere that child goes with mud and touches things, they're going to leave a little bit of mud behind. And that's what energy does, is that the way we are thinking, our thoughts, words, actions, and reactions leave these little sort of energy blobs everywhere we go. Everything we sit on, we sleep on, everything we touch, we hold, leaves an imprint. This is why I questioned the parcel that came from the postman. Was it the people who dug the crystals? Was it the packaging? Was it the people who handled it in transition? Was it the postman himself handing it to me? No, we got down to it and it was the actual crystal that was unhappy. But yeah, I find that energetic imprints, like the wardrobe, was it the energy of the room showing me the violence, that pushing of the woman up against the wardrobe, or was it the imprint showing me that? Or was it the actual energy of the wardrobe showing me that? I can't answer that question. I just go into these jobs all with a totally blank mind. Anyone who does psychic readings or mediumship, any type of psychic work, whenever you start, you're a totally blank slate. And then I will just observe what comes and what shows itself to me, because that wardrobe is 100% better now. And because the wardrobe's happy, the lady sleeping in that room is feeling better. She is sleeping better, which therefore improves her sense of well-being. So it's sort of like a knock-on effect when you do this work.
When did you first, I guess, how did you even first know to do this? When did you first feel, ooh, this object or this house or this room feels negative? And
I've always had like that feeling sense. So I would take my son to the barbers. So if I wanted to give you an age, probably from the age of 10 right through. So every chair I sat in at school, every movie theatre I went to and sat in the chair where maybe thousands of people have sat and people have left little blobs of whatever behind. And sometimes there's paranormal beings there. I once took my son to the hairdresser, to the barber, and I looked at the red couch and I thought, am I going to be lazy and sit down or will I stand up? And I went, nah, I'm going to sit down. As soon as I sat at the end of that couch, I started to feel sick. All those symptoms came to the head. And I actually said to my son, look, I'm just going to go outside and wait in the car because I just felt so unwell from sitting in that couch. So I am what you probably call a super sensitive. I don't like to give it too many names. I'm just really aware of the environment, which has its positives because I can avoid people and places and situations, but it also has its negatives because I sort of live a little bit like a hermit most of the time.
I could imagine. Yeah. And do you have a hard time if you go into big cities where there's just so much?
Yeah. Where I live in Hobart, Tasmania, it's a tiny, tiny city. And Tasmania is so far away from the rest of the world. is that we just live in, I pretty much go to the supermarket. I might occasionally go and visit a friend. I don't go to mass gatherings anymore, like pubs and clubs and movie theatres and things, because what I feel is not what everyone else is going to feel. So I don't want people to feel frightened to go to a movie theatre or frightened to go out and have dinner with their friends. Not everyone is this super sensitive. So I don't want people starting to create paranoia and panic and worry. All I'm giving is examples of, if your energy changes when you've been to a particular location, you've done nothing else in the last few days, and all of a sudden you feel unwell. You've seen your doctor, seen your mental health professional, and you're like, they don't know what's wrong with me. It can be energetic. You may have picked up an attachment because you're going through something in your life at the moment, or you've sat in something or stood on something or slept on something that has then come home with you. So you just need that energy clearing, and then you go back to feeling yourself again. I've done so much of this work on myself and friends and family before I started putting it out there into the world. I know it works. I just know it works because I used myself as a guinea pig for many, many years.
So have you ever had a client or friend? Well, probably, I'm assuming this wouldn't be a client because probably a client wouldn't be skeptical, but I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical and I still try this stuff all the time. So have you ever had a client or friend who was like, I have a really hard time believing this, let me try it, and then they changed their mind based on this? What happened with that?
Absolutely. I have a friend of a friend who is a psychologist. Now, psychologists are very mainstream, it's medical, it's mental health. That is what they focus on, and I get that.
My mom's a
This
psychologist.
lady was involved in something else that was going on down here with a friends group. I won't go into the whole story because it's very long-winded. But there was a lady sending out negative energy. Every full moon, she'd be pumping out the demons to hurt people because she was unhappy and sad in her life for a particular reason. So every full moon, she'd do these invocations, she'd do these rituals to hurt people. Now, I'd met the psychology lady, and she was very friendly, very polite. She knew what I did. She wasn't rude, but she didn't believe at all. She was like, no, it's total rubbish. She didn't say I was a bad person or I was ripping people off. She's just like, no, don't believe in it, until she became caught up in this black magic stuff that this woman does. And she contacted the friend that knows me. And she's like, I don't know what it is, but for the last week, my mental health has really gone downhill. I'm having suicidal thoughts. I don't know what it is. My life is the same as it normally is. Like, kids go to work, husband goes to work, she's at work, life's happy, relationships are great, the home feels good. I don't know what is causing me to have these mental health issues. So, of course, she saw her psychologist, because psychologists have psychologists like everybody else does. And they're like, I don't know what's wrong with you. Can't find it. So then she contacted the friend that knows me, and she went, look, I think I need to talk to your friend. So what she did, she sent me a picture of her face, because just as like when I'm doing house clearings, I like to talk to the house, is that I do the energy work long distance, because it can take anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hours to 10 hours to 25 hours sometimes, and people do not want to be sitting in my workspace for that period of time. So you only need the person's permission, and I like a picture of their face to look at, and I say their name, and I ask permission to enter their energy field, create that cord, do the cleansing and the clearing for them. Now, I didn't instantly go to the witchcraft stuff. I talked to her higher self. I asked, is there any energetic blockages that need to be removed? Now, this woman that sends out the black magic stuff, she creates cords into people, which is like an energy cord. So through this energy cord travel whatever demonic presences she wishes to send to hurt them. But what else travels through those cords is the person's emotions that they are feeling. Now, I'll explain that. Is that the psychologist lady, it's a nice lady, doesn't really have too many issues. She does not create rage, hostility, resentment, hatred, unworthy, worthless, bitterness. Because this is the emotions that were coming up. So this tells me the story, and I'm going, okay, are these, we'll call her Jenny, are these Jenny's emotions? No. Are these coming from someone who's courted to Jenny? And then I saw in my head the woman who is the issue, because I know this lady. It's a local issue. And I went, okay, is this particular lady courted to Jenny? And I got, yes. I went, right. Went in, cut the cording straight away. Because the other lady's negative emotions were traveling through that cording.
The one who did all that dark kind of putting, I don't know what the word is, just sending negative energies to people.
It's really, really fascinating, because it gives me an idea about what this other lady who's doing the witchcraft stuff, how she's feeling. So what I did, from the psychologist lady, I cleaned and cleared all the emotional imprints that she'd absorbed from this other lady. There was a couple there that she'd created, like burdened and overwhelmed because work is busy. She's feeling stressed in life like we all do. So I cleared those as well. The paranormal beings then went, I don't want to be here. And I said to them, right, what do you need to release so that you'll go? I always give them something and then they have to go. They can't argue. So we worked out that as a group of 4 demonic level beings, they wanted to release, I think it was rage, hostility, and resentment. So when I asked the higher vibrational beings to release that from them, why they went, they were gone. So we disconnected the cording between the lady doing the witchcraft. We'd cleaned the paranormal imprints, cleaned out the paranormal beings, cleaned out all the emotional imprints that she'd absorbed and a couple of her own. I then asked for her energy to be fully flushed of all those things, because there's always residual energy, and then hydrating her energy. Now, all of this stuff is purely what I'm asking the higher vibrational beings and her higher self to do. I have no part in this. I am literally the tool that the high vibrational beings use in this earth reality. Now, when the job was finished, I disconnected from this lady. So her energy is hers, mine is mine. Within an hour, I get this phone call from this lady, and she's like, I don't know what you've done, but I feel so much better. You were the only thing that I've had done. She didn't know when I was going to do it either. She said, don't tell me when you're going to do it. She knew it would be happening within like a 3-day time frame. So I didn't tell her. But within an hour of me finishing, she felt lighter, brighter. Her mind, she felt like her mind was hers again. She wasn't foggy. She didn't feel negative and resentful and full of hatred towards other people, because she said, it's not me. It's just not me. And she just couldn't work out what it was. So this is the power of doing this work. The person has to give permission. I don't do energy clearings for, I had a lady ask me once, oh, look, my uncle's dying of cancer. If you do an energy clearing for him, it might help. And I went, it may help, but I need his permission to ethically connect to his energy. And she asked him and he said no. So I went, I can't do anything. I wish him well on his recovery and on his journey with what he's going through, but I can't intervene. And his higher self would say no anyway. But yeah, that's so this psychologist lady knows now that she won't tell me it's real, but she doesn't doubt it anymore.
Right. That, and the fact you didn't even tell her when you were doing it, that's to me very evidential. So it sounds like you feel energies so intensely. Have you ever met a person where you're like, I do not like that person, and everyone's like, what do you mean? They're so nice. Like the person is so like charming and, you know, surface likable. You're like, I know there's something wrong. And then like other people found out later, they were like, oh, good call. So have you had that?
I can feel a lot of energy within people, but I don't go sharing it widely, because I don't want to defame people or make them feel bad about themselves because of what they're going through in their lives. But sometimes people will say to me in a friends group, you know, you don't talk to that person. Why don't you go near that person? I said, because there's I call them energetic influences. I don't use the dark or the demonic terms because that just frightens people. And what I do is not about frightening people. It's about educating people and helping people understand how all this works. But yeah, I don't tend to, I haven't got an example that I can give you that is quantifiable with what I feel with the environment or with people. But I know because of my symptoms, I just trust it. It's about trusting it.
So what would you say is the weirdest, biggest what the fuck you've ever experienced in all your work and research and everything?
Oh, you're going to love this one, and I'll keep it very G-rated.
You don't have to. My podcast is called What the Fuck Just Happened. It's
a little bit out there. Okay, so we've got a client in America. Now, she messages me because she's having strange interactions with something in bed that she can't see. She's got this being, I'll call it, feeling her up in bed. Now, she's an older lady. She's like my age, like 55. We're just kind of moving on. We're a bit past, you know what I mean? It's not part of our makeup to be thinking about that sort of stuff. I might just be generalizing here or being, I don't know. Anyway, so she messages me and she says, look, I've got this really weird thing happening. I feel like I'm being stalked by something I can't see. It's coming into my bed of a nighttime and it's doing things that I haven't done for like 30 years. She was telling me she was so embarrassed. I said, look, don't be embarrassed. Just lay it all out there. So she sent me a photo of her bedroom so that I could just tune into the room. I didn't find any energetic imprints in the room itself or in the furniture. But what I did find was a spirit level energy. Now, this wasn't a dark or a demonic level being. This was a spirit who had passed away recently. So he was talking to me because he was like, oh, I've been seen. He was trying to hide, and I'm like, I know you're there. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to harm you. Can we please just have a conversation? You're affecting this lady's mental and emotional health and making her feel very uncomfortable. And he's like, yeah, I know. I'm loving it.
Oh, no. Wait, this is kind of creeping me out because that means... Could this be like happening to all of us when we're sleeping and we have no idea?
I don't think so. This lady had a connection with this man. Like when we did the unpacking, he was someone that she'd known earlier in her life and that had a brief fling. And like he loved her like, I love you, love you, love you. And she just kind of moved on. And I think he felt a bit resentful. And he wasn't a very nice man. That's pretty much why she left. So when he passed, his resentment and his grudges lingered. So I look at spirits this way. When your soul energy leaves the body and it's still in the earth environment, you still carry all your personality traits, your characteristics, the way you think, your emotions. You don't actually elevate your energy until you cross that threshold into the afterlife. So he was out for revenge. So he was in her bedroom every night until we got this sorted, and he would get into bed. And it wasn't so much that the doona would be flung and he'd get in. He'd come through the blankets. She said it was the creepiest thing. She was doing protection and she was putting up archangel barriers and putting herself in white light. Nah. He was intent on being resentful towards her and hurting her in the only way that he knew he could. Sort of, he'd been trying to knock mugs on the floor and a car keys would go missing, all that usual sort of spirit sort of mischief. No, he went, right, I've had enough. I want what is mine, was his thinking. Like he wasn't a very nice spirit. So I imagine when he was a man, he wasn't very nice either. Anyway, we had a very firm conversation about how he wasn't welcome and that she didn't welcome him. And when I outlaid some of the emotions and how she was feeling, he actually started to feel quite bad about what he'd been doing. It was an interesting experience. It's like I'm talking to someone I can't see, and like I can't even see him, but I can feel his sexual energy, because I was feeling a bit uncomfortable in a certain part of my body, as you can imagine, because that's where his focus goes.
Oh
and
no,
like,
creepy. Ugh.
no touching. Do not come to my bedroom. You stay out of my house. I know where you are. Don't know who you are. She did give me a first name for this person. So I was able to call him by his first name. And I had to do a bit of psychological work with him around, why are you doing this? She left me. The usual human relationship breakup stuff sometimes carries on when there become spirits. Now, after we'd had, I think it was 3 nights, we had to have a conversation. It was her nights, my daytime, because she's in the Northern Hemisphere. So she still had a little bit more of hanky-panky going on, but she stood her ground and she spoke to him and she said, now, I know you're here. You're not welcome. This is not appropriate. We separated amiably all those years ago. I can understand you're resentful, but staying here is not going to help you or your energy. You're going to be bored. You're going to be lonely. You're going to feel, he said, I feel unwanted. This is what it came down to. This was the crux of it. He felt unwanted by anyone. He'd had a horrible childhood. He'd been sexually abused. All these things came out. And I'm like, wow, like I'm just sitting there writing all this information down. When he'd had his say and he'd got everything off his chest, I went, are you done now? Is there anything else you need to release? And he went, no, I'm done. I said, well, what do you want to do now? Do you want to stay here? Or do you want to go and be with your past friends, family? No, they won't want me. Look at what I've done. I went, no. If you make, this is how I work with spirits, if you make a conscious choice to go to the afterlife, you will be able to work on all of the traumas that you've gone through in this lifetime. And he went, what? No, they won't want me. They'll put me in hell. I'll burn and all this and all that. And I went, no. I said, hell is the devil's headquarters. There are no people down there. It's literally where all the demons hang out. It's like an office, like a party plan. That's where they stay. And he went, what do you mean? I went, you won't go into mass consciousness with all the other spirits. You'll need to go to another room in what I call the afterlife waiting room. There's a few different rooms where people go when they need to work on themselves. And he went, oh, so you mean I'm okay? And I went, yeah, you are. He said, I'm still nervous. I still don't trust. I went, okay, how about I take you to the threshold, is what I call it. Like a golden doorway or a white doorway, or some people see it as a picket fence, whatever works. So for him, it was the pub. I said, how do you want to see this threshold? How do you want to see this crossing point? Oh, my favourite pub. I went, okay, let's walk to the door. Now, I'm going to open that door for you. You don't have to go in yet. Just want you to look. And the angelic beings are going to show you what you are going to. And he was almost crying. Like I could feel him crying. Like I couldn't see this man, but I could feel his release was like, I sometimes feel spirits' emotions when they're going through, because they use us as a channel to transition off into the afterlife. And I felt his despair and his sorrow. And he's looking in this door, and all of a sudden he sees someone he hasn't seen for a very long time. And this person is walking towards him. And it's almost like this white sort of being, I could have been a man, a woman, I don't know. I wasn't focusing on that. And he literally I saw his foot lift and he just stepped over that threshold. That free will allowed him to make that conscious decision to evolve. Now, he would have gone to a place where he needed to work on what he'd done, in his lifetime. Who knows what that place is? I know there is also a place for people who take their own lives. They don't go straight into mass consciousness. There's like a healing room for them. There is a healing space for the dark and the demonic beings who want to evolve. That I've seen, and that's like, wow. But yeah, there's all those little rooms where people go, and these spaces where they can work on themselves and heal their energy. So that was probably the creepiest one I've ever had to deal with, like something in your bed that you can't see that's... But yeah, it was a good resolution.
I mean, it was an interesting story. Wow. It's something, yeah, I would not want that at all. Ugh. Think of some of the people I dated like back in the past too. No, don't want them coming into this stage of life. And I guess lastly, are there tips people can do to keep just a really positive energy around them, which will, I assume, not help them attract positive people and good jobs and just a happier life?
Okay. So it's not an easy path. You've really got to have a lot of self-awareness about your thoughts, your words, your actions, and your reactions. So what I say to people, to keep the paranormal beings away, all you do is simply work on living in a higher vibration. You don't always have to be positive all the time. It's really hard. As humans, we go up and down. But working on, if you know that resentment's your trigger or that person really annoys you, just don't be around them. You know, if they're not family, if they're just a workmate, only surround yourself, if you can, by people that make you feel good, people that make you feel positive. If you do have a negative person in your life that keeps coming back, what's the lesson you need to learn from that person? So basically, it's about self-awareness and doing the homework and not passing the buck. She makes me feel bad. I go, well, no, actually, you're feeling bad. What's making you feel bad about the situation? So I talk to spirits and people in the same ways, and the demonic beings sometimes when they come for a counselling session. But yeah, it's fascinating. So you can use the white light, and some people like to use sage to cleanse their energy. Some people like to wear crystals. They're all supportive actions that you can do. But working on your own awareness and being a kinder, nicer, more thoughtful, more generous person is what is going to help keep these paranormal beings away.
Well, that's a perfect ending to this. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your very interesting stories and career path and all of it. Where can our listeners find you?
They can find me, if they want to contact me through email, spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. I have a website, which is spiritualbeing.com.au, and the being is capital BE-ING. So spiritualbeing.com. I'm also on YouTube at Paranormal Specialist and Anna Paranormal Specialist on Instagram. I'm all over the place.
And the name of your podcast again? I assume it's on all podcast apps.
Yep, my podcast is called Perfectly Paranormal.
To get more information on what the fuck just happened, go to wtfjusthappened.net. There you can order my book, WTF Just Happened, A Sciencey Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of an Afterlife. You can learn all about how I came to conclude that there most likely is an afterlife, but you can also learn about the early stages of my grief and the amazing, fascinating people I met along the way. You can read about how much I harassed the mediums and scientists trying to get evidence to see if the mediums were cheating and see if what everyone was saying actually was true. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on any new developments and any interesting new what the fuck updates. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one.
And if any of you have had a crazy what the fuck yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, reach out on either Instagram at WTF_just_happened_, or email me at hello@WTFjusthappened.net. I love hearing from all of you. It makes my day hearing your stories and questions and feedback and all of it. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder, what the fuck just happened?